Hello, everyone. Morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're coming in from. I am Adele Bernard from Transition Clarity, and we're going to have another authentic conversation today. A little bit about Transition Clarity and the work I do. First off, I'm a transition mentor. I help people move through the bigger transitions in life, like career, um, housing, transition of a loved one. But more importantly, it's the transition of self, the transition from the ego mind that has all these conditionings, beliefs, and untruths that we've been told, and dropping into our heart, where the real truth lies and why we're here to serve this greater expanding humanity. And more importantly, is working with the Aquarian aged Renaissance man or woman who is opening up to their greater gifts that are ready to be shine bright in this new world of Aquarius. There is no accident you're here, and you have your own unique gifts to share with the world. And if you choose, I would love to assist you in helping you find those. Okay, here we are. Today it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Christiaan Willems, or as I know him, as Dr. Chris. He specializes in communication consultant and coaching. His extensive and unique, diverse career encompasses corporate communication, creative industries, international award winning television, and tyranny education. As a professional meme artist for over 25 years, Dr. Chris has adapted these highly specialized movement skills into coaching in nonverbal communication across the corporate sector. There'll be more in the bio, in the show notes. And with that, I would like to welcome Dr. Chris to the show. Okay, here you are, Dr. Chris. Welcome to Authentic Conversations. Glad you could.
Thank you very much, Adele. Thank you. Good to be with you.
Yes. So, as I mean, you've been doing this like acting and like as you said, and they know 25 years as a mime. How do
Hmm.
you bring that into television, now our Zoom, to help people get their point across in the magic squares?
It's been an interesting journey. I mean, my professional career started in consulting engineering. I was an engineering draftsman, and by the time I left that, I was a senior electrical design draftsman, and worked on used to design lighting and power systems and things like that. But I was doing music in parallel with that for pretty much all the time, and music gradually took over, and then I eventually turned professional in as a musician in the 70s. I'm really old, and and um, and then of course, being an artist, and you can never earn enough money to survive. And eventually, I did lots of touring, created lots of nice music, but eventually uh, kind of stopped doing that for a bit. And went back to engineering to survive. And then someone volunteered me to play drums in a theatre production. And at the time, I didn't know theatre existed at all. And so I thought, oh, yeah, okay. So I went along and literally stepped through the stage door into this whole new world that I wasn't familiar with in the slightest. And gradually, over a few years, I got involved in more and more productions, playing drums or accompanying, and yeah, every now and again there'd be a little bit part that we need someone to play. Chris, can you get away from your drums and just play this, do this little scene here with this? And I was a terrible actor. It was crap, complete rubbish act. Uh, but um, but the uh, I decided to go overseas for a while and lived in London. And because I'd been involved in theatre, I thought, oh, while I'm over here, while I'm in London, I'll do some courses and things. And a friend from Brisbane, which is where the city I'm from in Australia, was already living in London. Her name is Peter Lilly, and she said, "Oh, Chris, you should." She was studying mime at the time. And she said, "Oh, because you got the body for it. You should try mine." I had a slightly different body then, and so I thought, "Oh, yeah, I'll give that a go." And I started going to classes in mime, and I thought, "Oh, I can do this. I quite like it." And I seemed to have an aptitude for it, so I kept going. And in parallel with that, I always thought because I'd been a draftsman,
Yeah.
I'd study theatre design, but for various reasons too boring to go into. I ended up doing design for television instead, and so I was doing these parallel things, and I ended up getting a job at the BBC after I finished the course. There was I got a job at the BBC, well, once in a lifetime chance working at the
Yeah.
BBC. So and that was in Manchester. So I did that for some time, and worked on some fantastic shows. And one of the shows I worked on, sorry, I'm being very long-winded here,
It's okay.
but one of the shows I worked on was Alan Price at the Royal Exchange Theatre in Manchester. And Alan Price, you may remember, even though you're younger than I am, was did the arrangements for the Animals, the British band called
Right.
the Animals, like
Okay.
House of the Rising Sun. You might have heard of House of the Rising Sun.
Yeah.
And so really, and as a musician working on a show that was built around Alan Price. He'd hire the theatre, the Royal Exchange Theatre in Manchester for 3 or 4 nights, do a different show each night, and the BBC would record it. So getting to work on something like that was gold, absolutely once in a lifetime chance. And so yeah, I worked on a whole variety of shows, but that was kind of the highlight. But ironically, I'd left the BBC by the time it was broadcast, so I never saw it. And then
Mm.
last year, like 40 something years later,
Oh my gosh.
I'm looking at YouTube and it says Alan Price at the Royal Exchange Theatre. I said, no, it can't be the one that I worked on. And it was. So it's like 45 years or something. It took me to see my own work in terms of the stage settings and all that sort of stuff.
So how
Um,
did it look?
oh, it looked fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit dated now because it was 1980 that it was shot. But but it looked great, and I still had the drawings, still had prints of the drawings that I'd done, and I put stuff on Facebook because I was so excited. And anyway, so eventually came back to Australia, and having done mime and television design, and I'd been working on those things ever since like 1981, 82, and started creating solo mime shows, and over the years, I've created three of those and and the middle one of which was called Son of Romeo, which is a solo version of Romeo and Juliet in the style of a Bugs Bunny cartoon with no words, obviously, and solo. So I played all the parts, including Romeo and Juliet, and a cast of thousands and a small dog. And so and that did very well. I toured that for quite a few years around Australia and a bit of international stuff. So, and because because that had been the movement style and the sense of humor, because it was a comedy, the sense of humor that I applied to that was based on Bugs Bunny cartoons. All of a sudden, I thought, oh, I should probably turn this back into a TV cartoon, like an hour-long cartoon.
Yeah.
So I set about doing that, but that costs lots of money, especially at the time. But because I'd studied and worked in television while I was doing the mime, my mime teacher always said you can't do mime on television; it doesn't work. The silence, bothers people and whatever. But because I worked in television, I had this sense of how the oil and water
Yeah.
could be combined,
Yeah.
and so this was fairly early days of blue screen, green screen, same thing, different color. And so I thought, oh, that'd be the way to do it, to get cartoon backgrounds painted and have live performer in the front
Yeah.
with the cartoon backgrounds. And then what you do is you layer. So there were several of me on screen at any one time. And but it took 4 years to get the money. I mean, when you walk into a TV executive's office and you say, "I want to do Romeo and Juliet," that they're showing you the door already.
Yeah.
I want to do it like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. And they go, "Oh yeah, vaguely relate to that." I want to do it with no words, and I want to do it on my own, and I want $500,000 of your money to do it. They show you the door very quickly. But eventually, I got enough support and funding to create it. And it's one of those things in life where it didn't happen initially, and you get really disappointed. But and yeah, and then 4 years later, it was a bit like you're training for the Olympics. The thing was, in those 4 years, the technology had improved so much. The blue screen technology had improved so much that
Right.
by the time I got to do it, it was much higher quality, higher visual quality. So it's one of those things in life where you're really disappointed because it didn't happen when you wanted it to, but then the universe just holds you off for a bit until the universe gets it right and
Yeah.
and the technology was much better. And that I created that, and that won several awards around the world, and was sold to a couple of international territories. Ironically, not to the US, and it was based on Bugs Bunny cartoons. But yeah, no, it was nominated for an international Emmy, and which was it didn't win, but out of that came I got a letter out of the blue asking me if I could. It was from the Museum of Television and Radio in New York. And they said, "Oh, we've looked at the international Emmy nominations, and we like yours. And would it be okay if we have a copy of that for our museum?" Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So that was a nice compliment. But it was very different, and from a performance point of view, it was quite very complex to do because you had to interact with yourself. So you do all of Romeo's bits for us in a scene, and then use that as the background, insert that as the
Yeah.
background to Juliet's bits over the front of it, which sounds really simple, but when you're performing and you've got to interact with characters that you can't see, it's pretty tricky, really. So anyway, the mime that I'd studied that led to that, and there was another
Yeah.
third show, but that's the very detailed, very specific, very nuanced movement techniques that were utilized for that, literally down to an eye blink. You can be a mime artist for 25 years, but you can't do it much longer than that because you just get old and people get bored with it. But applying those skills, those movement skills, to the
Yeah.
corporate sector, and specializing in nonverbal communication,
Hmm.
that became the metamorphosis of from being a performer to being a coach in that very specific, very specialized area. Well, that and the television, the screen stuff, that became the new goal to make that happen. And I, I've worked in universities and I've coached university academics in presenting to camera, but I've taught in universities sort of in the normal sense of being a lecturer. And I thought, oh, I better get a doctorate. So I'd already got a master's, and I thought I'll do a doctorate. And it's a practice-led doctorate, and it was about, well, a third of it was about that, about converting those mime skills into professional communication.
Hmm.
And the deliciously pretentious title of my doctorate is Music, Mime, and Metamorphosis, because it kind of describes that journey really. And yeah, and for the last 24, 25 years, I've been coaching people in movement, in nonverbal communication, and more in the last few years, more on the on-screen stuff as well. Before COVID was the thing,
Yeah.
I just started doing that already, and then COVID of course, as we all know, hit, and all of a sudden we're film stars,
Yeah.
whether we want it or not. And so, but it's interesting, see, I've been prattling. You haven't had a word in edgeways. You never let a mime artist start talking, Adele, because you can't shut them up. Uh,
Well,
so
but it's interesting. Like I'm just going to reel it back a little bit for the fact of how many transitions you've had to get to where you are today, right? Like, and would you have ever thought when you're coming out of university with engineering and like electrical that you'd be a mime for
isn't it fascinating?
25 years
Yeah,
on TV? Like, right? I mean, it's the whole thing, and that's my biggest thing is that transition transitions are happening whether we're aware of it or not,
absolutely.
right?
Well, it's, I mean, my parents decided I was going to be a draftsman because, quote, draftsmen are never out of work, which, you think, oh, yeah, well, that's fair enough. And so I started studying engineering and became a draftsman. But the first job I had, I lost because there was a downturn. So, ironically, having said draftsmen are never out of work, I found myself absolutely out of work because there was an economic downturn and the building industry stopped. But um, it's at that stage of my life, and I didn't never finish my university course for engineering because I was too busy doing music. But um, it's you're right. We don't know where we're going to go. We have no idea. We think we do,
Hmm.
but life happens, and you go, "Oh, this looks interesting over here," and off you go. You go and do that for a while, and you go, "Oh, this is good," and that leads you down another path. And and I always say, no experience is ever wasted. As
Hmm.
a television designer, and one of the reasons I got the job at the BBC was because I'd been a draftsman, so I knew how to do technical drawings and make them look good and quick and accurate and all that sort of stuff. So every experience that we have informs everything else that we do, and it's remarkable how at the time it doesn't seem relevant, but it actually is, whether we're aware of it or not. All
Yeah.
all the things that we do inform everything is ultimately connected, and the thing I've discovered over my long and checkered career is that life is not linear, and either we decide to change direction or the universe
Yeah.
decides to change for us. And in the 70s, as a musician, as I said before, I didn't know theatre existed. So
Yeah.
mine was, and but yeah, it's like the chance comment of a friend and colleague saying, "Oh, yeah, you should try. You should, you got the body for it." In fact, Peter Lilly, the woman who suggested I try, she still lives in London and she's very successful as a mime artist. In fact, she was in at the time, she was in a couple of video clips, including Ultravox's Vienna. She's the woman who comes down the stairs in the cold building and also in a Steve Winwood video clip as well, and several others too. And
Yeah.
and video the radio star, she's in that video clip as well. So that was at the time, round about that time that I was living in London. And she's gone on to do wonderful things on stage and screen as well.
Yeah.
So a chance comment like that literally can change your life. And something you didn't even know existed, you give it a go. You go, oh wow, this
Yeah.
this is all right. I can do this.
Well,
And it
and more importantly, like what I like about your career changing is that what I'm finding with working with the men, they're never given that opportunity to take the pause to figure out what the next step is,
that's a
right?
very good
And
point.
so and so what I like about your story is like, well, you followed your parents' advice, ended up without a job,
Yeah.
and just took that pause and said, well, what else can I do? And yet
Mm,
that training served you well in the BBC,
absolutely.
has served you well. Like now that you've had the cyclone, you go, okay, let's check out everything. Like what's attached, what's not attached, like what do we have to fix, right? And I find that with all of us in this world change
Mm,
into a new era of the Aquarian age, the feminine rising, we are finally starting to bring things back into balance,
absolutely. Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. No, it's a very good point that you make, and we essentially we have no control over that.
Yeah.
You know, the universe will do what it does, and we're along for the ride in a sense. Yeah, we can fight it, we can resist it, but it's a bit like, my getting really disappointed when I couldn't do Son of Romeo when I wanted to do it.
Hmm.
But the universe was saying, just hold on, Chris, because in a few years' time, the technology is going to be so much better, and you'll have a much better outcome.
Hmm.
And so it was, yeah, it's a fascinating thing. It's a fascinating thing.
But it's also in
Mm.
the fact of don't lose your dreams because
Absolutely.
our timing isn't the universe's timing,
That's right. Yeah, you're
right?
absolutely right, Adele. Yeah,
Yeah. And so that's where, like, when you say about the control, like the more we can let go,
yeah.
and no one says it better than Eckhart Tolle when he says, "Is that so?"
Mhm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's raining. Is that so? Oh, it's sunny. Is that so?
Yeah. When
Because
you say, I was just written down,
Mhm.
letting go, because that equals trust, doesn't trust in
Yeah,
the universe, and we have no choice. And as you rightly point out, if we resist those rhythms
hmm,
uh, of the universe, we're doing ourselves harm,
yeah.
effectively.
It's like
That's
floating down the
frustrating.
river. You can
Hmm.
float all the way
That's right.
down
Yeah,
easy.
that's
But if you're
right.
trying to paddle, or not even paddle up, but trying to get up the river without the boat, without the paddle, like
Hmm.
that's a hard
Yeah,
life.
absolutely. And it's relentless, and the river will not stop for you.
Yeah,
So you absolutely have to get carried along. And the river can take you to places where you weren't expecting to go.
yeah.
There'll be a tributary off here that you go, oh, this is fascinating. And so, but when those things are happening to us, we tend to forget about the universe. We tend to go, well, here's my plan. This is what I'm going to do in X years' time. I'm going to do this. But it doesn't happen for whatever bunch of reasons, and it gets really frustrating, and we can get quite angry about that. But you're right, just letting go, and trusting that the universe. You've got to do the work. I mean, to get, to
Oh
prepare
yeah,
for when it
no couch
happens.
potato's gonna win the $1 million.
No, that's right, that's right.
But if you're
But
taking that step every day, couple steps every day, yeah, you might have a setback, but okay, well, let's reevaluate, let's think about it,
hmm, hmm,
right? Like
yeah,
it's just like you're the drummer. Why would anyone come and ask the drummer to come on stage?
well, indeed,
I
come
don't know.
and
Let's
coach
see what
me.
happens. Like,
Well, it's kind of, it's letting go. It's also being open
yes.
to opportunities that come past. Because if you close, if you've got tunnel vision, I mean, sometimes tunnel vision is a really good thing to have because it gives you clarity and purpose. But what it closes off to you is everything either side of the tunnel that may be even better
Yeah.
opportunities, but you don't really discern that at the time,
Well, and I
and it's not a conscious thing anyway. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say, and I like that you brought in the metaphor of the tunnel because if we're open and we're shining our light for who we are,
Mm.
we have no idea what's in that tunnel.
No,
We go and
absolutely.
we're like, wow, look all the stuff that's been in the dark. But we have our
Yeah.
light on. We can see all this stuff. And so here in Canada, we have a lot of tunnels because of the snow, right? Up in the
Yeah.
mountains, right? And I remember as a little kid, oh, turn on the lights. We're going through the tunnel. Then you turn off the lights and then you turn down the lights. And I go, why don't you just leave them on? Well, why would we? Like I'm a little kid, right? And
Yeah.
so now it's like there's no lights to turn on because they got genius. They put the lights in the tunnel,
Of course. Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, just in my day, I'm like, oh, how interesting, how things have shifted. It used to
Yeah.
be alternating lanes, put on your lights to go through the tunnel. Now it's like two lanes both ways. Don't need
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
put lights.
Yeah.
And yet you think it's the same road.
Well, that's right. It is, but it's illuminated in different ways, and I mean
Hmm.
illuminated in every sense of the word. The light, and also the realizations that we can have because of that illumination.
Yeah.
No, it's a fascinating journey, and and I think the older we get, the more we realize, well, what's the point in fighting it? as you say, the great analogy of floating on the river, you have to go with it, and
Well,
wherever it takes you.
and in my younger, crazier days, you think, oh, well, the river's not flowing that fast. You get dumped into the river and you'll find out how fast 5 knots is at like, oh, it's not fast. BS.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah,
Like, it's like, wow, 5 knots has a good speed to it.
yeah. And you don't and you can see the water flow. Yeah, oh, as you say, yeah, that's not too fast. But the force of that water
Yep.
when you get into it is massive, and there's no way of fighting it.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a great analogy, and the more we fight it, the more exhausted we become, and the less we achieve in the
Yeah.
end. So you have to go with it, and you can make adjustments as you go through, and sometimes those adjustments can be large, and sometimes they're small and subtle. But yeah, the journey is interesting. The journey is a very interesting thing, and I mean, having a background in the arts gives you exercise your imagination,
Yeah.
and you can, by definition, one is a creative. And so how we think about things, how we perceive things is different to, a lot of people who don't have that creative or artistic gene. Yeah, we're never going to be rich. It's unlikely that we're going to be wealthy, but my God, the journey along the way is fascinating, and we create new things, and yeah, that's why the arts is so important, and it's so important in business
Well,
because we
yeah.
create creatives and we bring new thinking and new perceptions to the world of business. I mean, when I'm introduced to a bunch of people I'm running a workshop for, so Chris used to be a mime artist, and I say to them, well, I can just about hear you all thinking, what the hell's mime got to do with corporate communication? And I do this little exercise with them, the cliche of the wall and stuff, and doing the exercise, that this little activity helps them realize that, well, the thought that you have to put into that, making that illusion convincing
Yeah.
is exactly the same thought and self-awareness that you need for your whole body when you're doing a presentation, whether that's on stage or on screen. So once you explain that, they go, oh, okay. And all of a sudden it becomes, I don't teach them how to be mime artists by any means, but it's the illustration of the principle behind,
Hmm.
what I do and why I do it and how I've arrived at this point. And it's because it's, again, it comes down to self-awareness, and physically as well as mentally, for our respective journeys through this bizarre thing that's called life. And any skills that we respectively bring to that journey are useful. They may not appear useful at the time,
Hmm.
but they are. I mean, I'm complete rubbish at the financial accounting side of the business. It doesn't interest me in the slightest. I mean, yes, I need to earn money, but um, the mechanisms around, what's a P&L and a balance sheet and all that sort of stuff that people get really excited about, and justifiably so, when the books balance, accountants get really excited about that. I don't give a toss, as long as I'm not losing money. But but the what excites one person is not of interest to another, and in the reverse, we, artists do what they do because it's a vocation. We have to do it. If we don't do something creative on a regular basis, it's like oxygen. We lose oxygen and we die, internally. So we have to do it. We have to do something creative. In the last few years, I've kind of come full circle, gone back to music. I've been writing songs and putting out albums and stuff as well, um, because I've been working in the corporate sector for a long time, and I love it. But for
It's
myself,
draining.
yeah, it is. It's really exhausting, and I love working with people. I love helping them make that leap,
Yeah.
from being unconfident as a presenter to, well, as I say, I get you comfortable, confident, and credible on camera and on stage and online, because that's what I do. And the one of the absolute delights about it is that everyone is different. You can have general principles of movement and body language and stuff, but every person carries themselves in a different way because they are unique. As I've
Well,
said, we each have a unique personality, but we also have a unique physical personality as well, and that's what we
absolutely.
yeah,
Well, and I agree with that because people always say, well, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to do it. And I'm like, words are 7% of our communication,
absolutely,
right?
yeah,
That's why the meme is so poignant to people because they're like, but we get what they're saying. They haven't said a word. I go, I know, but you're watching their body language. And
that's right.
and I've taken a lot of courses on body language and face readings and and it'd be like I'll be, talking with somebody, I'm like, okay, your face just said that didn't land. And they go, pardon? And I'm like, your face went squirrely. Like, okay, do I need to repeat something? And it's just like you're talking about teaching corporate how to make the wall,
Mm,
right? And I
mm.
come in on the other side. Do you even realize you've put up a wall? No. Well, it's all energy. If you're sitting in the meeting, right? And when I worked corporate, it got to the point like I didn't let people bring their cell phones in because it's like they weren't paying attention. And then
Absolutely.
I'm not repeating everything 5 times.
No,
I just
indeed.
didn't have the time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so unless you could prove to me that you needed to have like there's an emergency out in the field or whatever,
Yeah.
phones in the basket.
Yeah, really good idea. And technology I often say I refuse to believe that 100 years of technology have nullified 1 million years of evolution. We are an animal species that we read each other's body language and consciously or otherwise. But things like technology having an impact in, as you say, the example that you brought up, you're having cell phones in a meeting. But
Mhm.
but now, a very basic example is if you're doing a presentation in a meeting or whatever, and people look at their watches, you're going, oh, it's boring. They've disengaged. But
Mhm.
these days, people are getting emails on their watches,
Mhm.
and so it does that. You go, oh, look down at what's the email, and it's really insulting to the person doing the presentation and to the
Mhm.
meeting. But it's a natural response to, bzz, oh, okay, better look at my watch. So how we read that small, that tiny detail of someone looking at their watch is now misinterpreted as, oh my God, get me out of here. I'm so bored. No, now it's, oh, I've got an email. What's that about?
Yeah.
So the same result, it's a distraction and one disengages from the presentation as an audience member.
Well, and then the meeting, instead of being a quick half an hour meeting, ends up to be an hour and a half, and you're like, well, if you guys just turned it off for half an hour,
Yeah.
for one half an hour Monday morning.
Hmm.
But no, you guys choose to be disengaged. You choose to answer the email on your phone
That's right.
rather than paying attention.
That's right. And it's I mean to some extent, to be fair, when we get those distractions, we're going to look at them because they're, if, in whatever form they arrive. But I suppose it's a miniature version of having your laptop on the desk and an email comes in during the presentation, so you just start typing away and responding to it. That's a
Yeah.
very obvious version of that. But it's interesting how technology has, it's helped us in many ways, but it's also had the opposite effect in many ways. And
Well,
uh,
I
and
think it's made us dumb.
it's what, sorry,
It's made us dumb.
man is
Like
dumb.
like
Yes.
don't get me wrong. I love my chat GPT. I like it's been a brain saver for me because it's like I'll be out walking and I'll have all these thoughts. I'm like, I can't figure it out. I speak it into chat GPT and it organizes it. So when I get back to my computer, I'm
Oh,
like, that's what I was trying to say? Cool. Right? and and so it was really interesting as I was trying to reimagine where I'm supposed to go with this company.
mm,
And I was saying, like, I feel like it's becoming working with the Renaissance man in this new era. And it says, oh, we like this new direction.
mm,
This
mm.
direction will suit you very well. And I'm like, oh, it's starting to have feelings too.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well,
Right.
indeed. Well,
And that's okay because it's all part and parcel of how we communicate. So this is really interesting. I heard a while back that if you go out as two couples for dinner,
Mm.
and the men tend to sit across from each other, right?
Yeah.
They'll slightly be off from square.
Okay.
And I'm like, what do you mean? They said if they're square shoulder to shoulder, their animal instincts will say, who's striking first?
Ah, right. Yes,
But if
an
they
aggressive.
move over an inch,
Yeah.
they'll be relaxed. Their animal instincts
Wow.
will be
That's
fine.
fascinating.
And I thought, interesting. So since I heard this when I go out, like coffee shops, whatever, I watch where they sit.
Yeah.
They're usually diagonal.
Right. Yes,
And I
yes,
was
yes. And
like, this is powerful stuff, right? Because I'm all about the energy of it,
yeah, yeah.
right? And
Mm.
or seeing couples that like you think they're trying to talk to each other, but both of them keep going to their phone.
Yeah,
I'm
yes.
like, are you having a conversation together? Or are you I don't get it,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
And when cell phones first came out, I actually said this to one of my musician friends. I said, "Do you like our time together?" And he says, "Yeah." And I said, um, if you do like our time together, can you leave your phone in the car? I said, because every time you get on the phone, because they work at night,
Yeah,
people think they're free all day. They can chat all
right.
day. I
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
I don't work at night. I'm
No.
taking my time to have this lunch with you,
Yeah.
unless it's an emergency.
Mm.
And he was like, wow, I wouldn't have thought. And
Mm.
then when it was a few months later and he brought his phone in and I'm like, I looked at him, he goes, no, I'm expecting one call, it'll be 30 seconds. I go, all good.
Mm. Yeah. Uh, And that, sorry, I've just got a thing saying confirm your speaking language, English. Yes, I better save that.
Oh,
Um,
I don't, yeah, Zoom's been doing some weird things lately. So it's like, whatever.
what's happening? I've been speaking well, it's Australian English, so that maybe
Yeah.
maybe it discerns that it's a different language.
With a
Yeah,
slur of British English.
yeah. Swaziland. All of a sudden, I've Um, but no, it's true, and those kind of subtleties. I mean, it reminded me when you were talking about the two couples going out for a meal. It was my birthday recently, and good friends of ours. We were the four of us went out to lunch, and we were doing what you said. You know, we were sitting. The blokes were sitting opposite each other, women were sitting opposite each other. But I found myself slightly turning my whole body to make sure I didn't exclude Karen, our it's Jonathan and Karen, and my wife's name's Chris as well, so it's easy for us to hard for other people. So I found myself making sure that in any conversation, I turned my body enough to diagonally engage with Karen as well, because it does feel like, and now that you explain that, it makes perfect sense. It does feel like, oh, we're having an exclusive conversation. There's almost an invisible wall between us. But women do that too. Women just seem to be able to. They have a different way of communicating, and
Well, they adjust.
well, that's true. Yeah,
So they'll
yeah.
move their shoulder, they'll cross the legs, they'll slide like yeah, it's quite interesting. And then just on a funnier note, um, I also heard m- that's why football and soccer and everything's so important for men. I'm like, why? Because they're side to side, right? So if you want to get a man talking, get him driving
Oh, okay. Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
because their subconscious will come out because they're
Mm,
concentrating on the road.
that's
And
right.
then when I heard that, I said to my mom, I go, except in our case. And she goes, no, he pays attention if I keep feeding him. So, no, yeah, the joke was to go to England. If my dad could have figured out how to drive there, he would have.
Oh, okay. Well, see, it's interesting because I have no interest whatsoever in football of any code. I just couldn't be bothered. There's one thing in Australia or in Queensland, which is the state I live in. There's a thing called the state of origin, where Queensland and New South Wales 3 times a year have called the state of origin match, and it's the only time I watch football or even bits of it because my wife's family is from New South Wales, not Queensland. So there's a familial kind of rivalry there that happens, but. I have no interest whatsoever. My dad used to be a fanatical soccer fan, but I don't. Yeah, I actually like tennis and Formula One motor racing. A bit of a bizarre
Well, yeah,
combination.
but whatever the stand is, it doesn't matter what you're watching, right? So I want to circle back as we're talking about families and stuff. What did your parents think of when you left the career they wanted you to do to go into?
Oh, I think they were always really, really worried. Because as parents, we all want the best for our children, and my parents were doing absolutely the right thing in trying to, set me on a career path, which is great. But again, it's like the universe, or it's like being an artist. It's a vocation. You have to do it. If you don't do it, you go insane, or you psychologically die because it's that oxygen thing. And following one's path wherever that takes one
Mhm.
is really important. I mean, my parents were both POWs in World War II under the Japanese, so they knew about resilience, they knew about survival, and they knew, and so that whole experience for everyone that came out of World War II, surviving was the thing that
Yeah.
you had to do, and you couldn't, and economies were stuffed and everything. And so you had to do whatever you had to do to survive.
Hmm.
And I think, that's a DNA thing. I think that's fed down through generations. And you know, but survival isn't just financial, in my view. So,
No.
so is
Financial is
yeah, it's
financial.
physical survival, is psychological survival, and growth, and not just survival. I mean, my parents were the classic immigrant story from the Netherlands to Australia, and it's another whole story. But and how they got there, but many that's a story common to many families that came out of the survived World War II and ended up in the Canadas. There's lots of Dutch people in Canada as well as
Hmm.
Australia, and so, they're all looking for new opportunities or survival opportunities, really. And Europe at the time didn't or couldn't really support them enough of them
Yeah.
to be viable. And it must have been such a horrible time
But it's
going.
also about opening up to like um Aristotle Onassis was saying like after the war, he was saying buy up the ships and people are like, why do you want the ships?
Hmm,
They never
hmm.
understood it. He became
Yeah,
like the richest man in the world because he's like, we have just proven we can take ships anywhere in the world.
yeah,
Why not
yeah,
buy up the ships? Well, we're not
yeah.
using the ships, but they're still steel,
Well, that's right.
right?
And it's, they're the sorts of people, the Richard Bransons of the world who are different and
Hmm.
have a different perspective on the world and can make it work. And along the way do things that don't necessarily trample people to death or whatever. But just thinking, they have a creative, innovative approach to
Hmm.
everything. And so, I mean, to be fair to my parents, they were trying to do the right thing, and they did, in terms of my career and my sister and brother as well. Um, but but they never really understood what I did or why I did it and why I had to do it. I was compelled to do it. But they were always supportive, and I remember I was living in Adelaide at the time, and I rang them and said, "Oh, look, this was in about 1990 for my third solo show," and I said, "Look, I'm very likely going to give away the mime thing in its performance sense. And do you want to come down to Adelaide and see the show?" And they did, which I they had no interest in theatre whatsoever, but I was really chuffed that they flew several thousand kilometres
Oh,
to see
wow.
my last performances as a solo mime artist in that uh, capital P performance context. Um, so I was, because they never went to the theatre. They didn't, Dad was into soccer, Mum was into music, whatever. But I was really chuffed that they took the time to do that.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was an interesting thing for them to do, and it gave me a whole new, because I thought they'd say no, don't worry about it. But it gave me a whole new appreciation of them as parents because they supported me, even though they didn't understand what I did or why. They supported me in that journey, and yeah, by then I'd become quite successful in that different context, and yeah, and I remember when SBS showed Son of Romeo on television, the television adaptation of my stage show. My dad couldn't understand why I wasn't all of a sudden a really famous TV star. But I said, well, it doesn't kind of work like that, Dad. But yeah, I was very appreciative of the comment because he
Mhm.
was just blown away by the production and um, so yeah, but he couldn't understand because we're surrounded by this celebrity stuff all the time, and even more these days, and he couldn't understand why I wasn't sort of walking red carpets and things. But it's interesting to achieve that. Yeah, and as I say, it won some awards and all that. And in fact, in Montreux in Switzerland, there's a television festival and market called the Golden Rose of Montreux. And when I did Son of Remy, it was in that market, and I was up against in the competition. I was up against the first episodes of Red Dwarf, The Simpsons, and Mr. Bean, and Son of Romeo was in there, and it didn't win the Golden Rose. Mr. Bean won it, but I was voted in the top 10 programs.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
against that kind of competition, you go, that's not too bad. I'll take that one. Didn't win the
Yeah.
Golden Rose, but no, that's not too bad. I was immensely proud of that. And so yeah, Dad couldn't really understand what why I wasn't really famous, but I did it
But
to prove.
in the mime world, you were famous.
Well,
But that
indeed.
just that world is just so small. Like,
Absolutely. And in fact, had a long conversation with Marcel Marceau after I'd made the program. And for various reasons, he was touring Australia and I tried to get together with him, but there was a pilot strike at the time. This was in 1990, pilot strike. And so everything was disrupted. He didn't get a chance to have a look at the program. But we met in Paris that later that year. And I wrote this article afterwards, and I called it "A Chin Wag with a Legend." And we sat down for an hour and talking about. And I showed him the brochure with different photos of me playing different characters, I remember him saying, "Mime and television must join hands, each making aesthetic compromises to the other," and that's what I'd done effectively.
yeah,
And I was immensely proud of that. And he was such a gracious man. So he was such an absolute delight to have a chinwag with. He was very generous, very charming. Could have been an arrogant. I won't say the word, but could have
yeah.
been very arrogant. But he wasn't at all. And it was raining in Paris as I left the hotel where we were staying next to his school, and but there was a warm glow around me and that conversation that was. And yeah, in these days of selfies, I so regret I never even took a photo of the event of sitting down with Marcel Marceau for an hour, having a chat about the program that I just made and about his work and my work and all that sort of stuff. And I didn't even take a photo, but I do have a 9-page letter, handwritten letter from him when
Wow.
we were trying to get together in Adelaide, and the logistics just weren't working because of the pilot strike. And he wrote me this 9-page letter saying, "Look, I'm really sorry I haven't been able to see the program, blah, blah, blah. And I'll leave this at the concierge at the hotel." And it's it's gold, you go, wow. And it's on his letterhead with, and it's handwritten sort of very great
That's
flourish
more
of hand.
powerful. That's more powerful in my mind than the selfie.
It kind of is, isn't it? Thanks for saying
Because
that.
because he took the time to sit down, collect his thoughts, to express his feelings
Yeah,
to you.
yeah.
The selfie is
Good
like,
point.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, thanks for that. Um, yeah, but isn't it hard to conceptualize the fact that as recently as 1990, there were no iPhones. There was selfies didn't exist, but and that's not that long ago. That's why I
I
say
know, but I mean, you say 1990, you forgot to do the selfie. I still do that today. I'm like, My phone is in my pocket. I feel it. I don't think to take a selfie because I
Yeah,
don't take
yeah,
selfies.
yeah, yeah.
Like
Now, well,
I,
look, it's interesting, isn't it? Because like
yeah,
we had Chris and I had dinner with for my birthday. Had a lunchy thing with our kids, our grown-up kids. One's 25, one's about to turn 22, and right at the end of the meal with, oh, we didn't take a photo. Because it's important to capture those moments, those family moments, because we don't do that very often anymore because they each have their own lives. And it's really important to capture them because in the end, that's what we've got. We've got our memories and enhanced by photos. The fact that we have several thousand photos probably means
yeah.
we mightn't even look at it again. But having them is really important. And ultimately, all of this stuff, everything we're talking about, it comes back to our personal human relationships with other people. Whether it's Marcel Marceau or our son and daughter, or talking
Well,
to
and
someone
and that's
the
the
other side
thing.
of the
So I grew up in a family that there might be 10 photos of me as a kid, as a baby, because we
right.
just didn't take photos.
Yeah.
And now with my parents, they go, we don't need photos. I'm like, well, how are you going to remember this?
Hmm.
We had the experience. We don't
That's
need.
true.
And I'm like, and it's really funny because now they're starting to get older, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, you don't remember yesterday, but you're going to remember this trip. And it doesn't matter. We were there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought,
And it's funny.
touche, right?
Indeed, and we're finding increasingly, excuse me, these days that for birthdays and Christmas, we don't give each other gifts, we give each other experiences.
Yeah.
And in fact, I Chris and I gave someone a flight in a Tiger Moth aeroplane for a birthday, and she just loved it. It was just and I don't know whether she took photos or not, but the experience she still talks
Yeah.
about. It's so fantastic. My kids bought me for my own birthday, bought me a simulator flight in a 737, which I'm going to do in a couple.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's great. That's great because we don't need more things.
No.
We've have so many things that we hardly use anyway.
Yeah.
And the older we get, the more that experience is yes, I want to try that out. So
And this is what I'm seeing too, like people who that help downsize people
yeah,
is you and your wife decide to downsize your home and they go, okay, well, we'll give this to the kids. And the kids are going, we don't want your crap. We got enough of our own, right? And it's like, and then like even myself, I've been trying to sell some winter coats and stuff, right? Well,
Mm.
how many years am I going to try? Or am I just
Yeah,
going to donate them? I need
yeah,
it gone. I need that person that used to fit in those clothes. She's
yeah.
gone. She's been gone a long time. She's not coming back.
Well, that's true, but yeah, as we have kids, we accumulate things on the journey, and we accumulate them more than we get rid of them. And yeah, when you've got kids, you buy stuff for them and all that. Yeah, the whole childhood journey is cluttered with stuff because it
Hmm.
kind of has to be. That's pretty normal. But yeah, like you look at all the spare rooms in the house and they're all full of crap. You go,
Hmm.
oh, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff, and then you start going through it, and then something will trigger a memory. You go, oh, I'll hang on to that because that was associated with X, Y, and Z. Um, and then yeah, a day has gone past and you haven't thrown anything out because it means something, or it did mean
Oh,
something at the time in one's life and those things are fairly precious, really. But yeah, sometimes it's just crap that you need to throw away,
I'm a
or
good
or
chucker. It
that's
it
good.
takes it takes me a while to get into the mood, but once I'm in the mood, it's gone,
Mm.
gone, gone.
Well, isn't that great?
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's so easy to accumulate
Hmm.
stuff that
Well,
we
and
don't
it's funny
use.
because my family came from the tropics, right? So from the Guyana and Trinidad, and you just didn't keep stuff because it rotted.
Yes, that's right. Of course.
So
Yeah,
if it wasn't great wood furniture like teak, like and it rotted.
yeah. Indeed,
And
indeed. Yeah,
so it's quite funny because when I'm at that age where everyone's starting to lose their parents, right?
yeah, yeah.
And And I was saying to my girlfriend, I'm like, oh, I feel sorry for you. And she goes, why? And I said, you got the barn, the Quonset, the house, the like, right? And then her mom heard my comment and said, well, we heard about you guys. And I go, that we're minimalists and that we don't keep crap forever. I prefer it. Right. So
Yeah.
when I go to like when my parents decide to downsize or move on or whatever, some most of the stuff that they have, I kind of want to keep
Mm. Yeah.
because it's artwork that I can't get anymore from a family friend who's a beautiful artist. That I'm like, I already claim that, whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
and everything else. See
Mm.
ya.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Well, my dad died well before my mum, and my mum would go around and on the back of things or the underside of things write our names on it because I have a sister and an older brother, and mum just decided, well, do you want that? Okay, I'll put your name on it, and I'll put your name on it became a thing, became a saying in the family. I'll put your name on it. Uh,
It's that was
very
that
sad.
generation.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that generation who survived World War II, it, it's partly that's partly the reason why you want to hang on to the cane furniture from Indonesia because that's mum and dad had that or mum had that, um, and it's but you think, well, are my kids, as you say, are my kids going to bother? They won't understand. You can explain it, why it's significant to you, but it may
Yeah.
not be significant to them or as significant to them because there's yet another generation in between. So it's a fascinating thing to kind of observe and be part of as well. That interaction between the generations, and I mean, in my work, I was a director of higher education at the Australian Performing Arts Conservatory for like 10 years. It was I think I had to get a degree happening, a degree course accredited, and and by the time that I left, I had to leave because I was burnt out.
Hmm.
Um, by the time I left, I found it was increasingly difficult to relate to younger people,
Yeah.
partly because in my head, the generation before me was really tough and resilient, and they would survive anything. The generation after me, maybe the generation and a half after me,
Yeah.
seems far less resilient and far less able to cope with adversity. I mean, I remember
Because
thinking to
they've
myself,
never had hard times.
no, they've never had
The
hard times.
wars are too far away.
Absolutely, yeah,
And the
yeah,
war that they like, even in my like Vietnam would probably be the most closest to war that my generation would relate
yeah.
to. But we can relate to it because it was over there.
It was over there, yeah, of course, of course,
I,
and
I wasn't
it,
watching news about it. Like I was out
well,
playing.
yeah. Well, the thing is that these students, would be actors or dancers or whatever, and you think the arts is the hardest business to survive in. It's just
Hmm.
relentlessly difficult and hard and challenging, and you think you're not going to last 5 minutes once you get out there. If this is the way you expect everything done for you, etc. You're
Hmm.
not going to last 5 minutes. You'll learn very, very quickly that you have to be resilient. The irony of the arts is you have to be super sensitive to do the work, but you have to be as hard as nails to survive doing the work at the same time. And I call it case hardening, which is it's kind of brings back the engineering. Case hardening is a process where they use it for metal,
Hmm.
where they heat metal up red hot and they plunge it into a cold or a cool liquid. So it hardens the case, the outside
Hmm.
shell but the inside's still soft and pliable. And I remember writing about it in my doctoral thesis, and I call it the case for case hardening, because when you get out there, you get out there and do a performance or do a presentation, you become case hardened,
Hmm.
because you have to get it out there. And that's why when I'm coaching people, the course that I've created, the most recent course I've created, there are three outcomes which are implementable. It's mandatory to implement them. One's a 20-minute live presentation, one's a series of 20 to 30-second videos, and the other is hosting a webinar. And I make my clients do that because you don't realize until you're out there in front of an audience what works, what doesn't, what you have to tweak, whatever. So, and that's case hardening. So the those three outcomes are absolutely crucial to the learning, to the getting comfortable, confident, and credible.
Hmm.
So yeah, again, there's an engineering aspect to that description, and there's an artistic aspect to it as well, being i.e. as a performer. So as a presenter,
Yeah.
there's an element of performance in that. There has to be. Uh, and and so, coming back full circle, what I said before about no experience is ever wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the engineering knowledge is something that still informs
Hmm.
some of my thinking, and I delight in that because, I mean, if I have clients who are engineers, I can relate to them.
Yeah.
And people make jokes about engineers, but I can relate to engineers because I've been in that world and been sort of achieved things in that world. And the other nice thing, both my children were born in a hospital that I helped design decades
Oh,
before.
wow.
Yeah, it's fascinating just to see those circles come back around, and it just gives you a warm feeling
Well,
that
and it's interesting because like I know you as like making comfortable and confident and credible on Zoom or TV or whatever. Had no idea you were this educated. Had no idea that you were a professor too.
I'm not really a professor, but with a different terminology, I'm a doctor.
No,
And
but you know what I mean? Like it's
yeah, 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 yeah,
like you
yeah.
think you meet somebody and you've been in different networkings and you're like, yeah, I know who Dr. Chris is. No, I
Hmm.
did not. Like,
I take that as a great compliment, Adele.
well, yeah, because it's like, I mean, and even you even said like, I didn't know you had a podcast. Well, I was so far behind for last season with
Yeah,
so much in the can, I just stopped talking about it because I couldn't accept anyone on. And so
yeah.
when
It's
I
like,
finally got to, like caught up and I go, okay, what season two, what does that look like?
yeah, yeah.
Well, it's really interesting because all you guys are men coming on.
But
And I'm like, what's the universe trying to tell me? I'm working with men. Oh, thank you.
but
Message
everyone.
received.
Message received and understood. Thank you very much. Yes, Roger, over and out. But it's, I mean, everyone's story is interesting, I find. Everyone is unique.
Yeah.
So how and why and when we arrive at where we arrive at is a fascinating story.
Hmm.
And and that's manifested in how we look and move and carry ourselves.
Yeah.
I would say that, have you experienced successes and perceived failures? Because, when I'm talking to clients, because that affects how we look and move and carry ourselves. Our body language reflects how we feel.
Hmm.
And always say perceived failures because often, and we've kind of touched on this, what seems like a failure at the time either turns out to be a success or at the very least a catalyst for success further down the track.
I
So,
call those growth points. Nothing's
well,
a
in
failure. It's a
great
growth point.
growth point, yeah, it's because it makes you do something different. It makes
Yeah.
you cope with that, work around it, work with it, work through it, and then you arrive at a different point, and you've grown. So it is absolutely a growth point. You've grown as a human being, and it's life is a complex beast,
Yeah.
and we can celebrate it or we can resist it or whatever, but it's going to bloody well happen whatever we do.
Yeah.
And sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't succeed yet at the
Yes.
time.
Well,
And
and I'm just going to put this out there. Think about writing your story.
mm,
Whether it gets into a book, it doesn't matter because you're going to have grandchildren and great grandchildren that aren't going to know who your parents were
mm,
or who you were.
indeed,
Truly.
absolutely.
Like as
Yeah.
much as like my nephews know my dad, they don't know my
Right.
dad.
No, no, no,
They don't
indeed.
know that he drove around the world trying to find the best place to live. They have no idea,
No, no.
right? And just like I like I'm like, wow, this has been eye-opening because I had you in your little box.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We all have our boxes of perception, but we're all behind the box, behind the opening of the lid. There's
Yeah,
a much bigger world, and it's a fascinating thing to delve into people's lives. It really is. Um,
hence
yeah.
authentic conversations. I like to find people who has like, and this is what makes your story even more fascinating to me is like just your box of what I thought I knew was great.
Mm.
But I'm like, holy transition. This is fabulous. And on that note, as we should be wrapping up, what do you want the audience to know to understand? Because and also I will be putting in the show notes your beautiful gift. Maybe you want to add that into what you want to wrap up with. Um,
Sure.
yeah. How should we sum up this beautiful conversation?
Oh, well, well, I don't know whether anybody can sum up a conversation really, because it's an ongoing journey for both of
Mhm.
us, and for the people listening and watching. It's an ongoing journey that we I encourage all of us, including myself, to remain open to where that journey takes us, rather than trying to, stubbornly determine exactly where it goes. Yes, we
Mhm.
need to do a bit of that, but it's it's I don't know. It's just it's the older we get, the more fascinating I find life becomes. Sometimes distressing and horrible, but it's still fascinating. Whatever stress and distress we uh, we suffer at the time. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, mm. um, I'm happy to share like a white paper and for your audience, okay, I've been doing some webinars and things, and the host of the webinar says, "Oh, have you got like like a lucky door prize you can offer?"
Yeah.
I go, "Oh yeah, I can do that." And typically what I offer is a review, a video, a review of your business videos. Yeah, and if you want me to do that, you determine who wins the lucky door prize. But I'm happy to provide the PDF of the report, the white paper for everyone. But yeah, if you want to offer a lucky door prize, I'm more than happy to honour that, and pull a name out of the hat or spin the chocolate wheel or whatever, and yeah, do a review of your business videos and see what if I can help, if I can offer tips or whatever, have a look and see how it is. And often it's the smallest little tweaks make the biggest
Yeah.
difference in terms body language or how we use a screen or whatever. So yeah, but Adele, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight, an
Oh,
absolute.
yeah. Like it's just been eye-opening of like your journey. And it was funny because I was trying to think when I was in the BBC if you would have been there.
Oh,
And
right.
and so I had to look, so I was multitasking. I apologize.
Yeah, that's
Um,
all right. Fine.
but I was at the BBC in London when UB40 was recording Red Red Wine.
Oh, really?
And
Wow.
and I think it was 83, maybe
Right.
summer of 83.
Wow. So we only missed each other by 3 years or
Yeah,
thereabouts.
because
Well,
I remember bringing the rate like they had pressed a couple copies and they handed me one and I
yeah.
went home to my aunt's house and proceeded to play it and play it play because I'm a kid, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
next morning she said if you play that one more time it's broken. And I went to my mom. I'm like, Auntie Julia's gonna break my record because they were hungover from too much red wine,
Oh, okay, right.
right? So
Well,
she didn't need
yeah.
to hear
Well,
it. She was hearing it.
yeah, yeah, indeed. But isn't it, it's fascinating working with places like the BBC. You literally bump into people who are really really famous. Like I met Sting, and I didn't realise it was Sting until after I left the room. Peter Gabriel and people like that, and Harold Pinter directing his first television drama at the BBC. Yeah, oh my God, is this real? It's just amazing. The people that. that we encounter
Yeah.
on our respective journeys, and that's what a great story. Red Red Wine, UB40. Wow, great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what a delightful conversation, Adele, even more delightful is the fact that we're on opposite sides of the world,
Yes.
and it's a and with totally different climates and everything. So it's just a delight to hear each other's stories. And I didn't hear much of yours because I was prattling. As I said, never let a mind start talking, you can't shut them up. And but no, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Much
Thank
appreciated.
you. Thank you for being on the show. So once again, this is a authentic conversation, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Wow, what a journey we went on with Dr. Chris through engineering, through years in BBC and being a mime and taking a show all over the place and getting into the history museum. Like, we're all here for a reason. We have our transitions throughout our life, through the ups and the downs, the good and the bad. And um, who knew that I would learn so much, that he has so much education behind? Because I've only known Dr. Chris as the person who helps you with confidence online and how he can help you. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, another authentic conversation. This is Adele Bernard, your host from Transition Clarity. And if you're looking for help through the transitions of this ever changing world, through the emotions, the turmoils, the untruths that are showing up in your life, I am here to assist you through them. We never do this journey alone. And if this podcast is helping, or if I can help in any way, I hope you'll call, book a time to chat 101, follow me on LinkedIn, follow the podcast, like and share the podcast. Totally appreciate it. And until next time, Adele Bernard, Transition Clarity, your host of Authentic Conversations.